it takes. And we have talked about, and I'm sure many people watching have talked about over the past couple of weeks, what reasonable doubt means to them. Is it the opening that something else could have happened, or does it mean I have no doubt that this is the person that did this? And so that'll be something that we talk about over the next couple of days as we break this down. The jurors are allowed to talk to anybody they want at this point. They are absolved from their code of silence, so to speak, and so they can speak if they choose. None have come forward. We did not connect with them. It was a scramble to get out of the building and get on the air, and so it's been difficult to connect with them so far and see what they may think. But there's also very important rules not to follow them or anything like that. But if any come forward, it'd be interesting to hear what that means to them, the reasonable doubt and what was discussed. Because as we've talked about at length now, with a very short deliberation, they very clearly knew exactly what they wanted to do. It was interesting that yesterday, during closing arguments, the state walked through the instructions given to the jurors. They are handed, the jury is handed the paper sheets of what they must sign off on, guilty or not guilty. And it includes for each charge all the requirements for that charge. It's essentially a checklist of sorts. And so in the closing arguments, the state took that checklist point by point after their PowerPoint presentation, after the videos that they showed. They went through that list. This is first-degree intentional homicide. This is what we are supposed to prove, and this is how we proved it. Then they moved on to arson. They moved on to mutilating a corpse. They moved on to hiding a corpse. All of the requirements for each of those charges, the state went through point by point to try to convince the jury that they had met those requirements. Anthony Cotton, who we just heard from, argued differently. He said the state has not proven this, that there's reasonable doubt, but obviously the jury disagreed and agreed with the state here on these convictions.
Actually, Adam, I just want to ask you, have you seen any of the jurors? Did you see any of their reactions, when the verdict was being read? Can you describe kind of anything from them that you saw that we, of course, did not get to see?
Not when the verdict was read, Amanda. They were right there in front of me, but I was looking at Maxwell Anderson. I was looking at some family members. The jurors, of course, it was not a surprise to them when the verdict was read. They're the ones who came to that conclusion. But I did watch them as they entered, after they had reached the verdicts, as they entered the courtroom for what would be the final time. Very few looked at Maxwell Anderson, and that has been the case basically every day. Not a lot of interaction between him and the jury. Certainly they don't talk to each other, but even looking in the opposite directions. The jury's been attentive on the monitors. There is a monitor nearby Maxwell Anderson, but they have not really looked at him. Anderson has not looked juror by juror and had any, nonverbal interaction. So the reactions in court were primarily in the gallery. They were not there for the jury.
Adam, once again, thank you very much for your coverage inside the courthouse. It looks like people are beginning to meet outside on the courthouse steps. We are going to get out there very soon. Justin, as some of the things that you heard Adam Reif talking about just now, what are you thinking?
Well, in terms of reasonable doubt and what that actually means, just for everyone to understand, it's a doubt that causes a person of ordinary prudence to pause or hesitate in the most important affairs of life. That comes from jury instruction 140. That's what they're ultimately looking for. That's what the defense is trying to convey to that jury. When you don't have the forensic evidence, when you don't have the DNA evidence, does it give you pause? And is it something that would give you the pause to ultimately think there is a potential reasonable hypothesis out there that this happened in a different way, a different shape, a different person? And if the defense can relay that, which they were unable to do in this case, then the jury would have to find Maxwell Anderson not guilty.
I want to go back to one of the people that took the stand, Anderson's ex-girlfriend. What kind of impact do you think that she made on this case?
Well, it certainly was the piece to tie Maxwell Anderson to that secret beach. So he had been going there in the past. It showed that he was familiar with the area. It showed that he thought that this was a private place. I mean, we even heard testimony from her that he didn't want her to tell anyone where this was. He wouldn't give her the name of the place, the location of the place. So it really kind of tied together. This is his quote-unquote secret place where he could potentially carry out something like this.
Well, and she also displayed that, while she hadn't been abused in the past, that he showed a lot of anger.
Yeah, and this was an interesting point of testimony, and we heard a sidebar on this issue. The defense ultimately asked if he had ever been physically abusive to her, trying to ask a very narrow question that wouldn't elicit a rebuttal type of cross-examination. Ultimately, the judge ruled that that kind of opened the door to character evidence and allowed her to go into ultimately some of the aggressive nature that Maxwell Anderson had on specific instances.
That might have been I don't know about the most controversial, but one of the most interesting thing, I'm thinking of other major cases that we've covered here in the last couple of years, like Darrell Brooks or Kyle Rittenhouse. Those were magnetic. Those were lots of controversy. Can you do this? Can you do that? Was the prosecution, did they do a good job? Back and forth, a magnetic judge. For this case, it seemed pretty cut and dry. I mean, everyone, well, the jury decided pretty quickly that he was guilty.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a very, for lack of a better term, smooth and clean case in terms of the way that it was administered. Judge Cravella did a phenomenal job. The parties felt like were very amicable most of the time. You didn't have a lot of evidentiary issues. You had the defense stipulating to a lot of the evidence, and I think the reason for that is they weren't contesting where he was necessarily. They were just, again, poking holes in some of that lack of forensic evidence, lack of DNA evidence that you would have expected to see for the state's theory to be true.
This was a pretty typical trial, the way, in that regards at least?
Yeah, it was fairly typical. I mean, I think we had a couple evidentiary issues. We just touched on one of those evidentiary issues, the character evidence. We had an evidentiary issue with respect to whether those presumptive drugs were allowed to be admitted into evidence that were found in Shade Robinson's safe. And the parties really worked around that in order to try this case and follow the judicial orders.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, that didn't make any impact. That was surprising to me when I saw them introduce that into the trial. Did that surprise you that they introduced the fact that those presumptive drugs were in her apartment?
You know, it didn't surprise me. The defense has an obligation to explore everything and anything. And what we heard from the defense is it potentially creates a connection between a part of our society that may be more dangerous. They're looking for an alternative theory here. Ultimately, it wasn't effective with the jury, but they have an obligation to kind of explore any potential arguments that they can make. We didn't hear about that during the closing arguments, so I think it was kind of just a fact that was presented. The jury will do with it as they may.
It seems like much of the general public maybe doesn't understand that obligation and the threats that he and his family were getting. People just don't understand that everyone is deserving of that right of that defense, even if it's just to have the attorney sitting next to you.
Yeah. Look, I said it once and I'll say it again, you can't take shortcuts on anybody. Everybody deserves that defense. We value our freedom in this country, and when somebody attempts to take it away, they should have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think if anyone was sitting in that chair, whether it's for a heinous crime or something that's much less serious, they're going to feel that they're entitled to that protection against a very powerful government.
We want to go back out to the Milwaukee County Courthouse, where you can see family members and friends and supporters of Shade Robinson are still standing by, and media as well, waiting for the state to come out and speak to the public. But our reporter, Monse Ricosa, is out there right now. She just spoke to defense attorney Anthony Cotton. Monse, tell us what's going on out there.
Well, right now we're waiting for the family to come outside, but yes, just a few minutes ago I did speak with defense attorney Anthony Cotton, and he was saying that he felt good with how he presented the case, that he was somewhat surprised that the jury came back this quickly, but that he felt confident in how he was able to present the defense for Maxwell Anderson. He also spoke about how a few days ago and weeks ago we heard that he had some death threats against his family since he was defending Maxwell Anderson, and he says, as with any trial, he is relieved to have it over, and they will be presenting an appeal later on. He said what that all entails will be up to an appeals lawyer, but that he was confident with how he held this case, that he had a lot of evidence that they were presenting recently as well. So it was an interesting conversation with him that I think he overall felt happy with how he presented his case.
And Monse, you also asked him whether he would do anything differently or whether he regretted anything. Talk about his response.
He said no. He said he felt very confident with how he was able to present everything, and that it was Maxwell Anderson's right to not get up and speak to his behalf. So even though I think some people wanted to hear Maxwell Anderson defend himself up on the stand, it was his right not to, and I think that was something that defense attorney Cotton was very confident on as well, that they did everything that they could, and it was up to the jury to decide whether or not there was evidence to declare him guilty, and he ended up being declared guilty on all counts.
You've been outside since that verdict was read. What else have you seen out there? Are people generally knowing what's going on? Is it mostly supporters of Shade Robinson's family?
it does seem to be the supporters mostly. We've seen many vehicles drive by honking their horns, saying justice for Sade. I think that was the energy out here a lot. We spoke with one person who says she didn't know who Sade was, but she was here speaking with Sade's family, trying to provide more support for them. So while she didn't know who Sade was in life, she now knows her in this case, unfortunately. So we do have that support that was resounding for Sade's family. And also, as this woman, her name was Brittany, she said she is a mother, and as an African-American woman, she felt that this case was something that spoke deeply to her. And we also heard from, again, Cotton, that he didn't feel that the jury knew too much who was Maxwell Anderson, so he felt that he did have that case. We have a little sound from him when I spoke to him earlier. Let's take a listen.
And I think we did everything we could. It's the client's decision whether or not to testify. I think he made the right decision still, even despite the verdict.
Again, we heard defense attorney Cotton say that he was confident in how he presented the case. He would not have done anything differently, and he did all that he could to defend Maxwell Anderson. So now we're waiting to hear again from the family, who is expected to come out shortly.
Monse Ricosa reporting for us outside of the Milwaukee County Courthouse in the safety building. Thank you very much, Monse. We will check back in with you in just a bit. And, you know, Justin, your reaction to, I know you reacted earlier, but just the specifics of, you know, him saying definitively that he does not regret, you know, having Maxwell Anderson take the stand. I mean, you've got to think in a case like this, there has to be something that, you know, when you look back, and I know it's kind of early right now, but when you look back and say, well, maybe we could have done that, maybe you could have done this. I mean,
yeah, you know, going on the Maxwell Anderson, I think that was the biggest question we all had, is are we going to hear from Maxwell or not? And Attorney Cotton was correct in that it's ultimately his decision. Obviously, the defense counsel is sitting there talking to Maxwell Anderson as in terms of what they think he should do. But the biggest issue he's going to have if he takes that stand is he's going to have to explain all of the evidence that really pointed to his guilt in terms of her being on that couch, him walking away from that burning car, him hiding that backpack or not finding that backpack. Why is that sweatshirt that he was wearing on that MCTS bus in that garbage can? And if he doesn't have answers to those questions.
And Monse also mentioned the appeals process. Can you take us quickly through that?
Yeah, every defendant has the right to an appeal. And what the defense counsel has, in this case, Attorney Cotton, they have an obligation to file a notice of intent to seek post-conviction relief. At that point in time, there will be an appellate counsel appointed to him, and they're going to look at things such as ineffective assistance of counsel. They're going to look to see if there's newly discovered evidence. They're going to look to see if there were errors of law made during the trial that ultimately would give Maxwell Anderson a second kick at the can in terms of defending himself for this crime.
Justin, thank you. In case you're just joining us, Maxwell Anderson found guilty on all counts just about an hour ago. We are in live breaking news special coverage as we wait for the family to come out and hopefully hear from them. Let's go back to about an hour ago when this verdict was read.
As to count one, the verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count one of the information. As to count two, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of mutilating a corpse as charged in count two of the information. As to count three, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of arson of property other than a building as charged in count three of the information. As to count four, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of hiding a corpse as charged in count four of the information. At this point, I will poll the jury. What that means is as follows. I'm going to have the first juror stand in the back row on the far right. I'm going to ask you your juror number, and I'm going to ask you, stand your juror number.
That is Judge Crivello reading the verdict of the jurors, and right after that, she polled each juror individually to confirm that that was indeed their verdict. And from there, we saw her clear out the jurors and then give a few instructions, set a sentencing date, which is August 15th, I believe, in the morning. And so we've been waiting to hear from the family ever since then.
You know, and going back to that moment, right after we saw that image of Maxwell Anderson kind of, you know, maybe holding back tears or sucking in his last breath. Actually, let's see, I think we are about to hear from Sade Robinson's family, as we have been waiting. Sheena Scarborough, Sade Robinson's mother, should be coming out any moment. I believe that is someone that is with that immediate family. So we will wait until that family comes out, because we definitely want to hear what they, along with the state, has to say in reaction to Maxwell Anderson being found guilty on all 4 counts today at the Milwaukee County Courthouse.
I believe Adam is upstairs, so they may have just walked by him and are on their way out right now. We also heard Adam say that there is other business happening in that same courtroom.
Right.
And so the judge continues with her day, the prosecutor has another case to prosecute, the defense attorney, I would assume, has another case as well, but the only one that stays with this is this family that we're about to hear from. What's available for them as they continue through the process that they need to go through?
The family, I mean, you hope that the community continues to support them. Sometimes the hardest point in grief is when it's all over, and then you're left alone to your own thoughts. So I anticipate, it seems like there's strong support, a strong family unit. I anticipate that they'll continue to receive whatever support that they can from this community and from professionals.
This is the family and all those supporters walking out right now after being in the hallway for a while after the verdict, meeting with the prosecution and one of the witness rooms and the victim's advocate as well to kind of talk about what the next steps are.
First and foremost, we'd like to thank the jury. We'd like to thank the judge. We'd like to thank the community for stepping forward and helping us locate her remains. We'd like to thank them for having patience with the family and for their support. It has been a long year. It has been a moment of grief that no parent should have to bear, and that this family has endured. They've held their heads up high as they've sat through this trial. There were moments of weakness, there were moments of anger, there were moments of frustration, and throughout all of that, they were victorious in seeking justice. That was the most important thing to them, and we are appreciative to this community for supporting them in that. And as we move forward, we will be seeking legislation to help prevent this from happening in the future, to support women who are sex trafficked, who are kidnapped, who are put in positions where they are vulnerable, and where the system right now does not put forth enough effort to seek and find them before it gets to the point that they are missing. We want a situation where when someone steps forward and says that someone is missing, immediate actions are able to be taken. We want a better system for communicating and for women knowing how to communicate when they feel like someone's missing and what the next step is for someone to do. That's something that should be taught to students for them to be aware of how to react when they see a friend in trouble. I know that we would not have gotten to this point if it wasn't for the young women who saw the car on fire, stepping forward and saying something and calling attention to what they saw. It took a village for this to happen, and for this person to be caught for this crime, and for Maxwell Anderson to be convicted. It was many people who came forward and took those steps, but we also need to know how to take those steps. What actions should be taken when you see evidence? How do you collect evidence? What evidence should be collected and how to preserve it? Those are things that we are not taught that are necessary for our judicial system to function properly. And I believe we have Representative Stubbs here. She's somewhere over here. Here she is. She is helping to support this family and bringing forth that type of legislation and drafting those types of bills. She's been being instrumental in this community for seeking information from victims, from witnesses on how she can support what that bill should say. So if you have that type of information, if you have anything that you want to provide to her office, please do so. To me, the more voices that are heard, the more experts that can provide information, including psychologists, therapists, victim witness representatives, politicians, as well as litigators on both sides, defense attorneys and prosecutors alike. That information being brought forward to be put into a bill that can be concise, that can be proactive, that's important to this family at this point. We are going to be moving forward with our civil litigation case now that this has been resolved, and it will move forward quite rapidly once the sentencing has occurred. I am to some degree grateful about the fact that it was put on pause, because now I'm hoping I can get a ruling that he cannot use the Fifth Amendment to prevent such things as depositions and such forth moving forward. And we greatly did have the intent to hold a deposition where we will ask pertinent questions and where we can hopefully finally get to some other truths that the family would like answers to. And I thank you all for being here. I know from a health standpoint that my client has endured multiple issues health-wise that we are now going to be able to address and move forward on. She was pausing on some of her health needs just until this was over. But now we'll be able to focus on those things as well. I know people have asked that question about how she was feeling and her mood throughout the trial, and there was one day that she couldn't attend, but that was the reason. There's been some things that, I don't know if anyone has had moments of lack of sleep, but when you cannot sleep for a year, when you have to deal with the torture of what happened to your child, when you have to sit through multiple times being shown those photos by the prosecution to prepare her for sitting through the trial, then to have to actually sit through that and have community members and politicians in Waukegan put those things out in the public in an indecent manner. And I've been told, which I'm quite upset about, that someone in this media team, and I'm not sure where they are specifically as I'm standing here, but someone did a very disrespectful thing and put this out in the media and actually exposed photographs of her child. I am just begging you to remove them before we have to seek legal action against you as well. That was disturbing, that was disrespectful, that should never have been done. So whoever that was, please take that down. It is my understanding that that information is now sweeping through underground media. And if you don't know what I mean by that, there is a such thing as the dark web. The dark web loves to expose those type of photographs, and they make money off of them. This should not happen in the city of Milwaukee. This should not happen to any victim. It should specifically not happen in this case. I am extremely upset by that. That type of information should have even never been leaked to the media. If it was, you should have destroyed it. You should have had enough decency to destroy it. This case has been riddled with people who are inappropriate. This case has been riddled with people who are indecent, inhumane. That's why we are here. So for you to continue that type of behavior is appalling. It should cease. We are demanding that it ceases. The family is demanding that it ceases. The community demands that it ceases. We should not feed into the dark web. We should not feed into dark behaviors. Take action. Respect yourselves, respect this community. If you're going to be the people who report the news, report it in a proper manner. We have nothing else to say.
How do you feel the state prosecuted this case?
I believe they did the best job that they could with the information that they had at hand. This was a circumstantial case. There were no eyewitnesses, and he did his job to try to do this case in as best as he could, dealing with a person who did everything that he could potentially do to try to conceal evidence and hide. So when you have that type of person at hand, which is one of the most vile type of criminals that you could be, because your whole goal is to continue to commit crimes and get away with it, which is why most of us believe that this is not his first time. Most people aren't that good at hiding their activity when it's their first time. So we are happy that he is behind bars, that he will not be able to do this to anyone else.
How frustrating is it to still not have answers about where her remains are and how she died?
Well, we believe we know how she died. Based on the circumstantial evidence, the reports from the autopsy reports, we believe we know how she died. as far as the rest of the remains, I am hoping that throughout the process of the civil litigation, I'm able to give some more answers. I wish we could have gotten them now. I wish his family as well as him would have been more upfront and honest about what was happening. But someone that went to that extent to hide and conceal, how much more could we expect of that type of a person?
Do you feel justice has been served?
I believe justice has been served from the standpoint of a criminal situation. Justice is a strong word, and it requires more than just the judicial system from a criminal standpoint. It also requires litigation. It requires legislation to happen to prevent these things in the future. So those are things that a community has to do to support justice. Justice is not just one day in court. It has to be a continued effort by media, by the everyday individual when they decide to go vote. Justice is an ongoing process.
Just want to get to Sheila. Does Sheila feel like sharing how she remembers Sade?
She is honestly exasperated and exhausted. Both parents have been exhausted. I mean, this is a type of case where you saw a father get so angry and frustrated that he destroyed a ball that should be indestructible. And a mother who has sat through this this is grueling 2 weeks of testimony where you saw people getting exhausted to the point where they were falling asleep. You saw a mother get so filled with anxiety and frustration and overwhelming sentiment that has now harmed her physically, health-wise, emotionally, mentally, and everything else. This type of a case takes every cell in your body to get through. It's not something that you just can, oh, okay, let me go get through my day like you get through to a regular day at work. It's just not that. And so I understand her not speaking to you today. I understand her and respect her, and I hope that you do as well. Her taking the position that she's just tired.
Ms. Lonigan, everybody here has been in the courtroom every single day. Is there someone who could come forward to just talk about what it finally feels to hear that verdict that you all have been waiting for?
Step forward, please. Thank you.
You got this, Sheila.
Thank you, Ms. Sheena.
You got this.
Hold on.
I remember Sade is forever, she will be forever remembered as an angel, a light worker who's touched so many souls, so many lives in the Milwaukee community. She is our hero. She is forever leaving an imprint. She walked in her own path, her own light. She solved her own case. My baby solved her own case. That's how I raised my kids. We don't give up. We are fighters. I demanded justice. I stand tall. I stand affirmative. Sade will continue to walk with me daily and right beside me. Please continue to support us by walking in how you move every day. Like, live by your principles. Live in your true spirit. That's how Sade is remembered, from every job, from every stranger, from every person she touched. Her energy is just, it will be forever with us. Please continue to support the foundation, SadesVoiceFoundation.com. Myself and Adriana and all of the Sade's Voice angels and light workers that have been standing beside me, the whole team. We will definitely be advocating for all of the other missing, murdered, all of the other individuals in the community. I appreciate everybody in the community that's been standing beside us and by us. I know that there's a lot of other crime victim families in the community that have been outreaching me, and I had to, I have to take it one step at a time. I had to get my baby's justice first before I can be able to help maneuver and support any other crime victim families. But that's definitely going to be our mission. That's how I'm going to carry on Sade's, her voice, definitely. I'll be working with Representative Sheila Stubbs. Thank you so much for being here. We're pushing for the Missing and Murder Task Force. It's mandatory. The state definitely needs it for our BIPOC women, for all women. And just allow us time to just kind of grieve. I haven't really had a day to grieve since April of last year. Me and Adriana have been nonstop all day, every day. We my mom, my family, all of us, we don't give up. So that's what I can say about Sade. Go hard for your kids. If anybody has learned anything from this situation, please talk to your kids. Please communicate. Takes a village. See something, say something, and we'll be working to do many things. Just continue to follow us and support us, and my mission is for crime victim families.
Ms. Sheena, are you able to finally have some relief tonight after fighting so hard for justice, knowing that this man who murdered your baby is going to be spending decades in jail?
It's definitely it's a weight. It's such a heavy weight. It's never gonna be the same. Even for Adriana, like my mom, that's our best friend. That's my baby. That's my angel. And there's no such thing as justice. Like, we don't have her, but we all. I mean, please understand how you treat people and how you put out energy and how you recycle it into the community, because I guess that's what keeps me knowing that it was the relationship that I had with my daughter, and it's nothing but positive energy, and the goals and the things that she was able to accomplish in her 19 years is just so phenomenal. And I have that peace in my heart knowing that I did the best possible job as a mother, and I will forever have her close in my heart to spirit.
Sheena, do you have any words for Maxwell Anderson?
No. No.
What's your favorite childhood memory of Sade?
Everything. Her smile, just her light. She carried an aura, like the glow, the same aura that she FaceTimed me the Monday before she was taken. That same aura, angelic aura, that is literally a glow. Like, Sade carried that glow from birth, and it's just her energy. Her energy. That's my. There's so many memories. There's so many memories, and throughout all of this, like throughout the grief and everything, Sade continues to talk to me, to guide me, and her mission is still wanting to help others.
How does it feel to have the verdict but still not to have her crown? I know that's something we've talked about over and over again.
It's the most agonizing, painful thing, Bria. Like this, me and her dad, I just don't see how a demonic type energy can have no remorse and sit there, and you know how their family can support them and literally sit there and cover up and support the things that they were aware of that their son did. So karma's a bitch, and I will continue to fight to get her continued justice and for all of the other missing and murdered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no reason to go back there. Okay.
You just heard from Verona Swanigan, Sheena Scarborough's civil attorney in their civil suits, and Sheena Scarborough, Sade Robinson's mother. speaking after her daughter's killer, Maxwell Anderson, was found guilty on all 4 counts, including first-degree murder. You can see, you know, they talked about the health issues that she has experienced for the last year and a half since her daughter was, well, year and a couple of months since her daughter was killed in April of 2024. And you can see the toll that this trial, that first her 19-year-old daughter going missing, then finding out her 19-year-old daughter was murdered, and then going through detectives finding her 19-year-old daughter's body parts all over our area, and then Maxwell Anderson's arrest, and then now all of the months leading up to this moment. You can see the toll that it has taken on this mother. And as she stood up there and spoke, she held her composure, and she thought of others. She wants to continue Sade's legacy by helping other people, other crime victims' families, and she thanked all of the people that have shown up today and throughout this last year to support Sade Robinson's family. I don't think that there was anything that she left.
There's so much emotion, so much power, though, and advocacy, both from both of them, both from Sheena and Verona. She said, my baby solved her own case, and she will continue to advocate for other missing and murdered women. And Verona Swanigan talking about how justice takes a village. It took a village to find Maxwell Anderson, to capture him, to convict him, and it will take a village to get justice. She called justice a strong word, that this is not justice. It's some justice, but justice will be legislation. It will be people knowing, preventing themselves from becoming victims, or if they are, laying the groundwork of finding evidence. What exactly were they talking about there? She solved her own case.
Yeah, certainly it was very impressive to listen to Sheena Scarsborough. She is so courageous. She has been so courageous sitting through this entire trial, and now she is carrying on Sade Robinson's memory, and it is palpable. You heard her talk about her smile. You heard her talk about just the glow that she has, and it is really great to see them not ending here. Ultimately, we heard a lot of talk about legislation. Maybe we'll see digital dating legislation to keep people more safe. Maybe we'll see legislation regarding missing persons. And to them, you know, this is just one step in justice. Maxwell Anderson's life will now be served for the rest of his life behind bars, but they're looking out to the community. They want to continue to keep the rest of the Milwaukee community and the greater community safe, and it's really heartfelt to see.
Yeah, they're using this horrible experience, every parent, every mother's worst nightmare, to do something that will eventually sow some good into the fabric of our justice system, of our community, and families that have to deal with things like this. So you can see them. They are leaving the Milwaukee County Courthouse now, wrapping up what has been a very emotional morning that began at 8:30 this morning, and then the verdict coming down around 9:30. We have had reporters here all morning long. We will have a recap of what Attorney Verona Swanigan said, and the family, and a recap of this last day of the trial coming up on the CBS 58 News at noon. And we will hopefully get some insight from the state as well, since we were not able to hear from them during this news conference.
We are expecting to hear from them a little bit later on this morning. Again, our coverage will continue at noon. Thanks to all our reporters in the field. Thank you to Attorney Justin Padway for your expertise here this morning. For Amanda Porterfield, I'm Mike Kirkhoff. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. We'll see you at noon. We're clear. Great job, you guys.
All right, well done.